gonna go come back and I'll see your show. I'll be on. Okay.
Thank you.
Baby.
Bye.
You're welcome.
What is good, YouTube? I apologize for being tardy. This is my first time going live on here, and I really had no idea what the hell I was doing. So, we are live. I'm going to wait for some folks to come in the room here. Give people a chance to head on over. Hello, everyone that is here right now. We got the live chat popping off, so if you guys want to say hi so I know who's in here. I feel like it should be telling me like who is. Oh, okay, cool. Now I see some folks in here. All right, dope. I'm gonna wait just a couple minutes just because I'm a little bit late, so I'm gonna let a few people kind of come in the room, get it popping a little bit. I hope everybody's doing well. I know you guys are probably bored as hell. I know I've been kind of bored, but I've been using this time to study and do more research and, you know, just kind of pick up some more information. Please ignore my very messy, like, medicine cabinet thing over here. That was not my intention for it to be in this video, but it's all good. So yeah, I'm gonna wait maybe like 5 minutes. And then we'll get started. So I'm gonna go on Instagram and let everybody know that we are live, and then we will get it going. Let's see. Okay. Okay, cool. All right. What's good, Instagram? I'm live on YouTube right now. If you guys want to hop over here, I'm going to be talking about Saturn conjunct Pluto throughout the ages, and just all of the happenings that occur whenever these two planets meet together in the sky. So if you guys are not doing anything right now, which I know you aren't because everyone's quarantined, hop on over to YouTube. Verge the Astrologer on YouTube. I am live right now. I'm gonna wait like 5 minutes for you guys to hop over. Again, Verge the Astrologer on YouTube. The video is up right now. We are live. So if you guys are interested in learning about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction and, you know, everything that has brought throughout the ages, as well as, you know, what it's doing right now and what it might do in the near future. So Verge the Astrologer. Yo, what's good, TJ? Oh, what's good, Grover? You guys both messaged me at the same time on different platforms. That's what's up. I miss you guys. All right, but yeah, I'm gonna get off Instagram now. If you guys want to hop over, again, Verge the Astrologer, YouTube. I'm gonna start in like 3 minutes. So I will see you guys over on this end. Peace. All right. Oh, what's good, Dapo Sean? We were just talking yesterday. How you doing, man? My boy TJ is in here. It's like my little brother. My mom is gonna hop in a second. She was finishing her food, so I'm gonna wait 2 more minutes and then we'll get going. So if you guys have been here waiting patiently, I appreciate you. Yeah, we're gonna talk about some interesting history. There's a soursop smoothie, and it is everything. All right. I'm gonna wait for one more person to come in because we have 10 people, and I'm a life path 11, so that's gonna be the marker. All right, boom. We have 11 people. Let's do it. And anybody that comes in late, this will be recorded. If you're watching this as a recording, sorry for wasting your time. I hope you fast forward up until the point where we start. I'll put the start time in the comments so people know where to go. So yeah, without further ado, let's talk about Saturn and Pluto. So first and foremost, it's important to understand what Saturn and Pluto represent in astrology. This video is going to be almost entirely historical and astronomical. You know, astronomical means astronomy, science. It's not astrology, you know, so this is a really good video to pass on to skeptics because it's going to be fact after fact after fact. You can verify everything I'm going to say for yourself. In fact, I've mostly used Wikipedia to go and find my historical events. And then I use what's called an ephemeris. And I can go back thousands of years and you'll know where the planets were on any particular day. So this is incredible for studying astrology. This is why astrology is gospel now, because it's irrefutable. You can go back throughout history and line up certain events with certain planetary and celestial events. And it's like reading a book. They translate as above, so below. So the planet Saturn is the ruler of karma, the keeper of time. Saturn is that oppressive daddy energy. Hey, Kirsten. Saturn is the oppressive Yahweh figure in the Bible. You know, the part of Yahweh in the Bible that demands so much from his people. You know, he puts all of these rules and restrictions and regulations on them and makes this very Saturnine, dense and heavy world pretty much run by fear. You know, fear is the biggest tactic used by the Bible, by scripture, and used by religion to entice people into worship, into servitude. So Saturn represents fear. It represents death. It represents time. It represents struggle and conquest and challenges. On a personal level, it represents sort of your practicality, your discipline, how you're able to put your own rules and restrictions upon yourself so that you can do, you know, the things that you need to do in life. You know, if you're somebody that clocks in every day, you got to use your Saturn to set that alarm and get out of bed and get your kids ready. You know, those are Saturnian things. Long to-do lists, Saturn. You know, harsh penalties, Saturn. Time management, Saturn. So now what is Pluto? Pluto is also the planet of death, but it's not physical death the way that Saturn is. Saturn is death to your body. You know, the restrictive qualities of death in life. Saturn can block mineral absorption in your chart depending on where it is. So it's death to your physical body, and that it can delay and make things harder for your body to sort of cruise along. Whereas Pluto is more of an energetic, spiritual death. Now, it 1000% can have a lot of themes of physical death, but Pluto more so deals with death that leads to transformation. You know, so Pluto rules the sign of Scorpio. If you know a Scorpio, they've been through a lot of shit in their life, every single one of them. And it's because they're ruled by Pluto. Scorpios are intensity. Pluto rules destruction. It rules transformation. So Pluto has a lot of themes of war in astrology. Throughout the ages, Pluto is a significant significator for war, as is Mars. Mars obviously is the planet of war. But Pluto is more of like this generational energy that comes through every now and then to really tear everything down so that you have to build everything back up. So this isn't something that happens every day. You know, you don't need destruction and cataclysm every day. You need it every once in a while, you know, when a new age is coming, when, you know, certain power structures have gotten out of control. That's when some of these things are triggered by Pluto. So now that you know sort of the astrological interpretations of what these planets are, and mind you, for the people that don't know, it's important to know how these interpretations were developed. These come from the Chaldeans, from ancient Sumer, from ancient Babylon. These people mapped out the heavens. They said the gods gave it to them. They mapped out the signs, they mapped out the planets, and over periods of thousands of years, they watched what events would happen when certain planets were in certain locations in the sky. So after thousands and thousands of years of being like, okay, you know, whenever Jupiter and Venus come together, something good happens for people. There's some kind of blessing to be had. You know, whenever there is a total solar eclipse, very often a ruler dies or a king dies. You know, there's some new energy coming through. So, you know, it just is important to know how these energies came into being, because it's very scientific. It's not a spiritual, this pseudo spiritual thing. It's literally scientific observation that created all of these archetypes. We know when certain planets are in certain places and certain alignments, X, Y, and Z happens throughout history as a result. So today we're going to focus on Saturn and Pluto because they're conjunct right now. And conjunct just means that they're in the same space in the sky. They're within 10 astrological degrees of one another. So essentially, Pluto you can't see with the naked eye. So imagine you're looking through a telescope, you're going to be able to see Saturn and Pluto in the same shot because they're in the same part of the sky along the ecliptic, the zodiac belt. So, you know, they were both in Capricorn. Now Saturn is in Aquarius, but they're still conjunct. They're still very close to each other. So whenever planets are close to each other in that way, their energies are both beaming at the Earth from the same place, from the same source origin. It's almost as if the energies blend together and it's no longer two separate energies. Now it's one energy. So now that we've gotten that all out the way, let's get into the juice. Let's talk about the history of it all and what has happened on this Earth when these planets have come into contact with each other. Just need to close this window. All right. So we are going to start with the year 1518. The year 1518 is extremely important. This was literally the last time that Saturn and Pluto were conjunct in Capricorn. And now that they've been conjunct in Capricorn again, it's almost like that energy is continuing, picking up where we left off from the last Saturn and Pluto conjunction, but also carrying forward some of that energy from over 500 years ago. So let's talk about some history. So in the year 1518, the Rajput Mewar Kingdom under Rana Sanja achieves a major victory over the Sultan Ibrahim Lodi of Delhi. So essentially during this time, there were tons and tons of tribal wars throughout India. India was at war with itself. Civil wars, they weren't under one government like we are today, so it's technically not a civil war, but these are tribal wars throughout the entirety of India. So lots of crops on Hispaniola, leaving thousands to starve. So what the hell is going on in the world right now? Do we not have giant swarms of locusts destroying crops throughout Africa? So the same energy has repeated itself from that transit. Now, this same year was the Strasbourg dancing plague. If you guys have ever heard about this plague before, it's a legit plague that happened where over 100 people literally danced themselves to death. They danced until they died from exhaustion. Over 100 people. This is documented as like an actual scientific happening. This isn't an urban legend. This is legitimately over 100 people died from dancing themselves to death. So that goes to show the level of hysteria that these energies can bring when they come conjunct. Just think about all the weirdness that is happening in the news right now. Every time you turn on the news, it's just like, what the hell is this? So when I'm reading this about what was happening that year, it's more of the same. It's just like, what? Okay. But here's the big thing that happened in that year and why I'm starting with this year. Prince Charles of Spain legalized the sale of African slaves to the Caribbean. So 1518, Saturn conjunct Pluto, was the beginning of the slave trade. It was the beginning of people from Africa, Black people, the indigenous people of America who were Black, some of them. That was the beginning of us, being thrown down the totem pole. Because before that time, brown people were very powerful on this planet. And there was just this long drawn out process that led to the demise of those empires. And now, boom, 1518, we have the birth of a new race of people, African Americans. So boom, the first African slaves are sent over to the New World, 1518. They were sent to Hispaniola, they were sent to Puerto Rico, all of those Caribbean islands where Columbus did all of his nasty shit. So boom, let's fast forward now. We were at 1518. The next Saturn and Pluto conjunction after that was 1552 in the sign of Aquarius. In the year 1552, war broke out between Henry II of France and Emperor Charles V. So this was a very, very, very big thing that happened here. Essentially, this period of Saturn conjunct Pluto really formed Europe. There were so many different battles going on in this time. So we've got the Khanate of Kazan falls to troops of Ivan V. The siege of Kazan in 1552. Conflict between Ottomans and Portugal. Ottomans invade Portugal. We've got the Ottoman Empire attacked Hungary and seized many of their castles during this time. What else do we have here? So essentially 1552, beginning of the separation of the European countries. Because during this time, we had these big armies, colonizing all of Europe, colonizing most of the world, actually. But here we have countries forming. So then fast forward to 1585 in the sign of Aries. It skipped Pisces this time. Now we have the expedition organized by Sir Walter Raleigh departs New England for Roanoke Island. So boom, the Roanoke colony is established in 1585. That's huge. That, we're here right now. So July 17th. Now this one I thought was interesting just because it reminds me of the shit show and the circus that we see in the news right now. English Secret Service discovers Anthony Babington's murder plot against Queen Elizabeth. That was a huge scandal that year, was in the papers, etc. Another thing that happened that year, which was huge, the Pope excommunicated Henry IV, the first of the French Bourbon kings. So now we see the church start to rise to power, too much power, because we know what the church is about to do in the coming years. So this is sort of the birth of that. This is the church, telling a established country that they are under the subject of the church. So now let's go ahead to 1616 in the sign of Taurus. The New England smallpox epidemic began during this time, and it killed an estimated 90% of coastal native Congo to Salvador, Brazil. and killed thousands of people there as well. And there was also a huge outbreak of typhus in England during that year. So pandemics, epidemics going around. This is in the sign of Taurus. Taurus rules structure. Taurus rules money. So this probably moved all the money around. Especially 90% of those natives died who went in and took their land and made lots of money off of it. Now, fast forward, the Roman Inquisition delivers an injunction to Galileo demanding he abandon his belief in heliocentrism, which states that the Earth and planets revolve around the sun. So now we have censorship, major censorship, which is a theme right now, not on this level, but straight up censorship, straight up, keeping the truth from the masses, even though the people that shut this truth down believed in what they believed. This is the world's awakening process, essentially. So now, later that year, March 5th, 1616, astronomical work De Revolutionibus by Nicholas Copernicus is placed on the Catholic Forbidden Index. So now, boom, we've got the church excommunicating people. We've got the church hiding truth. We've got the church curating the world, essentially, letting people know what is true and what is false. They rewrote history by putting things on the forbidden list, by burning the Library of Alexandria and confiscating everything that wasn't in their doctrine, bringing that to the Vatican, keeping it under lock and key. If you want to know the secrets of the universe, I suggest you go break into the Vatican, because it's definitely there. They have all the ancient books. So now Walter Raleigh released from the Tower of London to seek gold in Guyana. So now we have the beginning of the Guyanese imperialism in South America. And all those people down there being raped and pillaged and taken advantage of just for money, for gold. The French Civil War ended during this year. And at the end of the year, Australia was discovered by the East India Trading Company. Translation, Australia was invaded. All those native people there, all the Aboriginals in Australia that are lower class citizens today who rightfully own that land. That was the year that the beginning of their plight and their traumas started. Now we've got, fast forward to the 1648, Saturn and Pluto in Gemini. The battle for Prague, the 30 Years' War, ended during this year. And the Peace of Westphalia Treaty was signed. And that brought an end to the 80 Years' War between Spain and the Dutch and the German phase of the 30 Years' War. So that's a really big deal. There was tons of fighting, and it sort of all there. And then later that year, the Battle of Guarapes. The Portuguese army defeats the Dutch army in the battle for the north of Brazil. That is huge because Portugal colonized Brazil. They speak Portuguese there. So here we have an earth-forming occurrence, again, happening during this conjunction. An earth-forming occurrence that literally shaped the lives of millions and millions of people. Every single one of these happenings that I've talked about, almost every single one of them, has been an earth shift. King Amankarat of Mataram personally stabs Trunajaya, who had led a failed rebellion against Mataram during a ceremonial visit, made deals with the East India Trading Company, the Dutch, aka he made a deal with the devil, to keep him in power and overthrow his enemies. Leads to the eventual coups that are running the show today, who wanted to be bigger than he was, wanted more power, and he made a deal with the devil essentially to get that. And it ended up costing him his country, his people, and his land. Now, Mataram is an island in Indonesia. So this is essentially Indonesia that we're speaking of. Now, this shit is crazy. Literally, shortly after this battle, where he kills one of his own people, makes a deal with the devil, his country hasn't been taken over just yet. Before his country gets taken over, in May of 1680, the volcano Krakatoa erupts. That volcano was literally just off the coast of Mataram, where he killed that other dude, made a deal with the devil, and ultimately lost that island, lost his people to the Dutch. So here again, we have the earth just giving us signs and symbols and clues and warnings. You know, that volcano went off right by that island, and then a few months later, the Dutch come through and sweep it all up. You know what I'm saying? And what do we have right now? Earthquakes, all these crazy ass natural occurrences. And honestly, we haven't seen anything yet. There's going to be a lot more with this particular conjunction. And another thing I'm not talking about is the squares. Now, when planets are 30 degrees away, meaning 3 signs away, that's called a square. That means they're in really bad aspect to each other. So these squares happen 15 years or so after the conjunctions. So essentially in the middle of each of these is a square, and that could be a day for a different video, because if I went over all those, we'd be here all day. But pandemics, natural disasters, etc., happened during those times. Natural disasters, and the Pueblo Rebellion was that year. You know, carefully organized revolt of the Pueblo Indians in league with the Apaches, who succeeded in overthrowing Spanish rule in New Mexico for 12 years. Indians were tried in Spanish courts and received severe punishments, hangings, whippings, dismemberment of the hands and feet, or condemnation to slavery. But they fought back. They fought back. And this is something that I'm not seeing right now in people, in us. Our ancestors, in many cases, were not afraid of death. They fought. They fought and they lost, but they fought. You know what I'm saying? So in a lot of these upcoming years, we're going to see more themes of rebellion, more themes of people fighting for their life and their rights. You know, it's like that quote from Black Panther, from Michael B. Jordan. I'd rather die and jump off the ship than live my life in bondage. Some of these people did that. Some of them fought to the death. Some of them said no. You know what I'm saying? Not encouraging anyone to necessarily fight to the death here, you know, but I'm just saying we can do more than we're doing. So boom, let's fast forward to 1715 now. Now we're in the age of Virgo. Prussia declares war on Sweden, the Great Northern War, with Denmark and Saxony. May 3rd, there's a total solar eclipse. A total solar eclipse is seen across southern England, Sweden, and Finland. The last total eclipse visible in London for over 900 years. And this was actually just before the battle with Prussia and Sweden and Denmark and Saxony. So boom, we have a total eclipse seen from that land, and then all of these happening shortly after. The Pacotaglio massacre triggers the start of the Yamasee War in colonial South Carolina. So more wars on American soil, not yet America. Then boom, we just talked about how there was a total solar eclipse visible in England. And I talked about earlier how total solar eclipses can foreshadow the death of a king. Later this year, September 1st, 1715, King Louis dies after the longest reign of any monarch in European history, 72 years. King Louis, like the cognac. This was one of the greatest monarchs in European history, and he dies right after that. Right after that total solar eclipse during the Saturn and Pluto conjunction. And then we sort of see a lot of the fallout with that throughout Europe in the years to follow. His son takes over for a short time. And then I believe it's a very short run. And then there's just a lot of conflict going back and forth with France, with England, with all the monarchs. It's basically like Game of Thrones, this period in history, with people stabbing each other in the back, ascending the throne, being taken over by someone else. Now this guy's king, just a whole mess. So now, boom, let's go to 1750. We're in the sign of Sagittarius now. So on April 14th, now this is my shit right here. I love this fucking story. Excuse my French. A group of West African slaves bound for America successfully overpowers the British crew of the slave ship Snow Anne, imprisons the survivors, then navigates the ship back to Cape Lopez in Gabon. Upon regaining their freedom, the rebels leave the survivors on the Gabonese coast. I mean, this just goes to show you the difference between people that live in nature and people that live in cities. Essentially the Western man versus everyone else before everything was westernized. African people didn't want to kill nobody. Neither did the natives. That's why it was very easy for them to be taken over. Not all of them. Some of the natives were somewhat militant. But for the most part, when you live in nature, you're peaceful. You're not trying to fight nobody. Why? Now, on that same day, the Viceroy of New Spain, Juan Francisco de Güemes, orders the peaceful conversion of all indigenous in Southern America and Northern Mexico. This region then was called Nuevo Santander. Nuevo Santander. Now, this is really important because if you know anything about Hispanics from that part of the world, or Hispanics anywhere for that matter, they really love them some Jesus. They love Jesus. They love white Jesus in any Spanish-speaking country. So here we see the beginning of the proselytization of those people who had their own belief systems at that time. The remnants of the Mayan civilization. It's not like these were fools, but the Christians succeeded in converting them all. So later that year, this was lit because this is literally what is going on right now. 2 weeks after police in Paris, this is May 16th, 1750. 2 weeks after police in Paris arrest 6 teenagers, for gambling in the suburb of Saint Laurent, rioting breaks out when a rumor spreads that plainclothes policemen are hauling off small children between the ages of 5 to 10 years old in order to provide blood to an ailing aristocrat. Over the next 2 weeks, rioting breaks out in other sections of Paris. Police are attacked, including one who was beaten to death by the mob, until order is restored and police reforms are announced. What is going on right now in this damn disgusting world? Sex trafficking, Weinstein, Epstein, literally this. I literally came across information the other day about, a lot of you know about adrenochrome. A lot of people know about that. I'll call it a conspiracy for now because I don't have proof that it's true, but there is some credence to the fact that organs and blood and just the life of children are harvested on this planet systematically to feed certain entities, certain people. I don't have all the answers for that, but it naturally are that fucked up and that evil. It's demonic. It's something that is more dense than a human life form. So ultimately, we see some of these themes coming through in the past. These people were taking small children to provide blood to an ailing aristocrat. Wow, it's just, we're still in that world, unfortunately. So later in that year, in advance of the province of Georgia changing in status from corporate-owned American settlement to a British colony, royal assessment is given to an act that lifts the province ban on slavery. So essentially, boom, slavery was outlawed for a little while in this province. Now Saturn conjuncts Pluto. Oh, it's back. Here, let's do some more oppression. You know what I'm saying? So boom, more oppression, more themes of slavery coming through again. Now, September 30th, a lot of people might remember this from school growing up, etc. September 30th, Crispus Attucks, an African-American slave who will later become the first person killed in the Boston Marathon of 1770, that happened during the square, escapes from Farmingham, Massachusetts estate of slave owner William Brown. In an unsuccessful attempt to recapture the fugitive, Brown runs an advertisement on October 2nd in the Boston Gazette, but Attucks eludes recapture. So this isn't the biggest story in the world, but again, someone fought back and it made the news. It was huge. It was everywhere. Think about all the slaves that might have read the paper or heard about the paper somehow, because a lot of them couldn't read. This was hope for them. This might have planted the seed for the Underground Railroad. Wow, one of us got away. Holy shit. We can do this. So boom, later that year, Spain and the UK signed a treaty to eliminate their hostility over their North and South colonies in America. So basically, they decided to work together in oppressing the shit out of everyone else. Now, this story is so crazy. December 29th, two physicians in Jamaica, Dr. John Williams and Dr. Parker Bennett, fight a duel with swords and pistols after having had an argument the day before about the treatment of billoy fever. Both are mortally wounded during this fight. Does this not remind you of just the fuckery of people in 2020 today? All of these dick measuring contests that happen, even on social media, oh no, this is the truth about coronavirus. Oh no, girl, I heard this. It's just like everyone wants to be right. Nobody can let up. Everyone's a freaking genius. Everyone's an expert. So here we have two men fighting to the freaking death over some stupid who was right nonsense. You know what I'm saying? So Saturn and Pluto coming together, these two energies can bring war-like energies. So here we have it manifesting through two people, So I just thought that was really interesting, because just look at the behaviors of people right now. It's just like, what planet am I even on? So here we have some of that. Now, we were just doing 1750. 1775, the Saturn and Pluto square, 15 years later, is the Revolutionary War. This was interesting because Saturn was in Libra, which rules law, and Pluto was in Capricorn, which rules government, society, structure, money. So we had a revolutionary war of people fighting against the government and the structure and the authority, which ultimately led to making their own laws, Libra. Saturn is also exalted in Libra. So it's like they were helped with their liberation during that time. It was a perfect energy to help them free themselves of whatever oppressions they were facing. So boom, now we go 15 years into the future. Now we're again, Saturn and Pluto are conjunct. This is the resolution of the Revolutionary War, the U.S. Constitution, 1987, in the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius rules humanitarian causes. It's all about brotherhood and fraternity and working together to make things fair and just for all. U.S. Constitution, when you read it, sounds pretty great, right? You know, but doesn't actually apply to everyone. And any law is just written to be broken. It's written to be manipulated. So in theory, it's this wonderful thing, and maybe it was for some people for some time. This country, you know, as fucked up as this country is and was, still a pretty Bevan, Saturn and Pluto conjunct in Aquarius. Boom. Mind you, that is the sign that they will be conjunct in next after this one. So 33 years or so, we might be looking at the birth of a new doctrine, a new set of rules and structures to live by. Hey, Alexis. Oh, wait, is that Alexis? I don't know. Okay, so now from this point, I started writing a little bit less because a lot of these events got bigger. You know, the U.S. Constitution is the only thing I wrote for 1787 because what else do you need? You know, it's the birth of the entire system that we live in. You know, the birth of the next 300 years happened during that time. Fast forward to 1819 and the sign of Pisces, we had the Indian War, which was sort of the climax of the Revolutionary War. Now let's move forward again to 1851, and we have prohibition in the United States. So restrictive laws, government abusing its power. And it's interesting because this is in the sign of Aries. Aries rules over beginnings, you know, new starts, essentially. This was sort of the beginning of our new government vastly oppressing its people, and the people seeing that and being like, oh, wait, no. Because before that, the U.S. Constitution did a pretty good job of uniting people. Idealistically, it's stuck in people's head. All men are created equal unless you're black. So when the prohibition laws were passed in 1851, that was the beginning of the angst in America. That was the beginning of, okay, now it's not just we're all revolutionaries who escaped from the mother country. Now there are different factions forming here. Mind you, prohibition was started by the Rockefellers. They essentially did not want alcohol to be a fuel source because Henry Ford said that cars can run even better and more efficiently on alcohol. So the Rockefeller family was like, nope, we can't have that. The future of this world is gasoline. It's going to make us rich. It's going to bring in the New World Order. So they shut that down. We had prohibition. Now, fast forward, 1882, this is really the height of the Rockefeller Empire. And this is in Taurus. Taurus rules money. Saturn and Pluto conjunct in Taurus. We have the Standard Oil Trust Company, a monopoly created to control multiple corporations set up by John D. Rockefeller and his associates. So we had the first monopoly in America. Not only the first monopoly, but the far most oppressive monopoly, the worst thing, one of the worst things that's ever happened to this planet, essentially, because of the fallout that it created, the amount of fossil fuels that we use, the amount of damage that we have done to this planet can vastly be attributed to the Rockefeller Foundation and the Standard Oil Trust Company, who used prohibition to, you know, propel petroleum oil to the forefront of energy. During this year, Thomas Edison created his monopoly. So we had the two biggest monopolies in America at the time and kind of still standing. These two monopolies built America. Con Edison and the Rockefeller family. with all the different businesses that they have. So, boom, now towards the end of this year, all Native Americans were forced onto reservations. So, literally, this is so oppressive this year. Like, very, very disgustingly oppressive. This was the beginning of the New World Order, essentially. You know, if you're someone who ascribes to that, all fingers are pointed at the Rockefeller family. You know, now obviously it started way before that with the Knights Templar. It started in Europe. It started in Sumeria even. But this was the guy who really made it a thing. And we all feel this today. We are all living the repercussions of what this man did. John D. Rockefeller and the Rockefeller family purposefully had all of the rails destroyed in America. Before we ran on petroleum oil with our cars, America had railroads everywhere. You could get anywhere in America on a railroad. Much cleaner energy, much more accessible to more people, but that was not the vision that this man had. He literally had every single railroad destroyed. They burnt them. They would have bonfires where they burnt the train cars, they burnt the rails. They literally left no room for error in terms of having their monopoly and building their empire. So, beginning of awful, disgusting, shady big business in America. 1882, sign of Taurus. Fast also have influenza starting a few years later, but it more than likely started during this time. During 1914 is when the first cases of influenza came across. Before it boomed, before it turned into something huge, a few years later in 1918. 1918 was the height of the influenza crisis, 4 years later. So now World War II was the square. So again, 15 or so years after a conjunction is a square between these two planets. And those serve as a continuation of the energy. So we had World War I conjunction. 15 years later, they're squaring. We got World War II going down. And that was in 1939. Again, it's 15-ish years for a square, 33-ish years for a conjunction. Depends where the planets are in their orbit. Certain constellations are a lot smaller than other ones, like Libra and Scorpio. Now let's fast forward to 1949. 1949 was the founding of Israel. And that is all I put because that is all I needed to put. This is in the sign of Leo. Leo rules theater, acting. The people that are in Israel right now, posing as Israelites, that's all I'm going to say because I'm not trying to get my video taken down. So how did these people come to possess this land? World War II. World War II was essentially used as a stepping stone to give this land to the Ashkenazi Jews. So boom, now we're kicking all the Palestinians out, more oppression. We're giving this land to a group of people who have no actual claim to it whatsoever. You know, think about this. The people who now live in Israel as Jews are Caucasian. The Israelites in the Bible built pyramids in Egypt. 120-degree blazing sun. Show me any white person that can go and do that without sunscreen. Because as far as I know, they didn't have that back then. It's a whole mess. So the founding of Israel happened during that time. There's this whole cahoots between the United States and Israel, if you're following that story and that narrative. So that was a really huge thing that happened during that year. Now let's fast forward to 1982. Now this was in Libra. It started in Libra, but then it moved to Scorpio. They were conjunct at the late degrees of Libra. So Libra rules the buttocks. Scorpio rules the sex organs. Libra rules the kidneys. I'm tripping. Scorpio rules the sex organs. In 1982, we had the birth of the HIV epidemic. Pluto rules death and rebirth. Death and rebirth, sex organs, sex. Scorpio also rules things that are considered taboo. During that time, HIV was the most taboo thing in the world because, you know, if you were a man with HIV, everybody's looking at you like, ugh. Not only because you have HIV, but also because they're thinking that you're gay. They're thinking that you're homosexual. During that time, still very stigmatized, still very taboo. So there was just this dark energy during that time where everyone was thinking about AIDS because it was dropping people like flies. But at the same time, a lot of people didn't want to talk about it. You know, a lot of people didn't want to even acknowledge or consider the lives of homosexuals during that time. You know, so we had this oppressed group, they're dying like flies, really awful, tragic epidemic, pandemic during that time. Fast forward, here we are. It's 2020. What do we have? We have a pandemic. We have sex trafficking, which is slavery. We have all of the fuckery in the world that match all of these crazy ass stories that I just read to you. We have the harvesting of children. We have all of these different wars and conflicts and dick measuring competitions going on. Saturn rules that oppressive patriarchal man figure, the boss, you know, the guy who's calling all the shots. The guy who's got everybody beneath him, he's the boss. He's the head honcho. Pluto is death and rebirth. So Pluto comes to bring death and rebirth to a lot of those people who are in those positions. What are we seeing right now? Last year, an unprecedented amount of CEOs stepped down from their jobs. We saw the fall of Harvey Weinstein. We're seeing the shit show of Donald Trump just unravel before our eyes. And really, he is just a symbol. Donald Trump is us. Donald Trump is a direct reflection of America, period. We deserve him. As a whole, we deserve that man. He is making it so that we cannot ignore ourselves. And it was written for that man to be president. Because you look at his natal chart, oh my God. He was chosen, he was elected to be the president of the United States at this time in history when all the dominoes are meant to fall, because they are going to fall. They're going to fall, and it's going to lead way to the beginning of a new age. And mind you, we're not really going to see the age of Aquarius in our lifetime. According to Zachariah Sitchin, that's in the year 2200. Was it 2200 or 2700? I forget. If my mom's in here, she'll write it, but it's one of those. But we're still we're behind on that. We're not quite yet at the age of Aquarius. We're starting to pick up on that energy. We're feeling it, but we're not quite there yet. And that's why we see ourselves in quarantine right now. Pisces, the age that we're in, Pisces rules isolation. Pisces rules hospitals. Okay, what's going on right now? Welcome. This is the age of Pisces. We are on the cusp of Aquarius. So we're seeing these two ages battle each other for supremacy right now. Technology versus deception. Technology can free you from deception, but technology can also oppress you. So we're in this very interesting juxtaposition right now. But these planets are conjunct. And everything that's happening right now is literally just falling in line with some of the things that happened throughout history. So what we can expect from this transit is more callings of war. More than likely, there's going to be some kind of war within the next couple of years. Most certainly by 2023, 2024. But we're seeing the pangs of that. We're seeing the birth of a future war between the United States and China. You know, these countries are just, the writing is on the wall. essentially. They're both too powerful, and neither one of them are going to yield. We're seeing this epidemic happen. And it's Saturn and Pluto. They claim lives. That's what it is. And you have to understand the natural cycle of things. Death is just a doorway, and our ancestors went through it way, way, way worse than we did. I just read off all of these epidemics, all of the slavery. You know what I mean? It's just like things really suck for us right now, but they could be a lot worse. And they really genuinely could get a lot worse. So we have to remain positive. We have to rid ourselves of fear. We have to, be in the know in terms of the things that have happened in the past, because they will come to pass again. With that being said, I think that is sort of all I wanted to dissertate for you guys tonight. I might make a separate video sometime with all of the squares, because there's a lot of tea there as well. The Black Plague, for instance, happened during a Saturn and Pluto square. So, I encourage you guys to do some of this research yourself. Like I said, you can go online, type in astrological ephemeris. You can type any year, and it'll bring up tables for each month and show where every planet was on each day of that month for that year. So then you can go back, you can trace everything throughout history. You can look up any historical event and go to the exact astrological energy of that day and literally read it. You can read the occurrence from the astrological energy and see exactly how it translates and how it manifests. Like clockwork, like math, it's all algorithm. My mom once said to me, she kind of said it jokingly, but she's like, we are living in a giant computer run by programmers. And you know what? That is a lot more true than what they tell us this world is. Because when we look at the astrology, when we look at math and numbers, and how many times the golden ratio pops up in nature, it is clear to see that we live in an encoded and designed system that thrives, that runs off of algorithms. So your personal astrological energy is an algorithm. The earth has its algorithm. Everyone else has their algorithm. The trees have algorithms. Animals have algorithms. And the combination of those algorithms and how they mix and match together generate the things that we see in the world. So in a way, you have a part to play in coronavirus, in all of these different things that are going on in the world, because your energy contributes to that. If you did not exist, what would be happening right now might be slightly different. Everyone's energy connects, everyone's energy feeds the algorithm and is fed by the algorithm. It's all like a giant computer. So in that, just know that you are eternal. This virus is just a virus. It's just another hurdle for the human race to jump over. We've been through a lot worse. We will go through a lot worse, and things will get a lot better. We are on the doorstep of a positive polarity, a new paradigm shift in humanity. The biggest shift that we have seen in thousands and thousands and thousands of years. We're coming out of the dark ages of spirituality, where the gods have kept everything from us, where the government keeps everything from us. And we're moving to an age where truth will free you, where enlightenment will reign. So all that we can do right now is keep ourselves enlightened, push away the fear, and know that there is nothing new under the sun. What has been will come to pass again. If the virus takes your body, you will be right back here in a new body soon enough. So at the end of the day, all you can do is just roll with the punches and just try to take it for what it is. Learn the lessons. See why. Why would the universe want people to go through these lessons at this time? What are we learning from that? What are we learning from coronavirus right now? Maybe we're learning just the sheer fuckery of human beings. The fact that there are people who believe that there is this deadly virus outside and yet they're going hanging out with their friends. People are licking toilets on TikTok. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times these things just come to expose humanity and let us know that we can do better. Because we can and we will. And that's where we're going. So I thank you guys so much for hopping on here tonight. For those of you who were here in the beginning, thank you for being super patient. I'm literally technologically like dumb. I had to call my mom and ask her how to start this live. I'm supposed to be the one helping her with technology, but you know, I'm not the best at it. So thank you for bearing with me. And I'll be back on here very soon. I have a couple other video ideas. If you guys have any ideas for videos that you would like me to do, please feel free to hit me up either on here, on Instagram at Verge the Astrologer. And please, if you have time, remember to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And I wish you guys peace. I hope you guys all stay safe out there, build your immunity, and, you know, just be good. Peace.